Hello and welcome to the D
and A of Home Interiors, the podcast which is all about empowering you to make confident interior and furnishing decisions for your home. I'm Audrey, founder of Audrey Whelan Interior Design.
And I'm Deirdre, founder of youfurnish.com, such 100 plus furniture retailers on one website. The DNA of Home Interiors is proudly sponsored by checkatrade.com. If you need help with your next home improvement project, you can search from over 39,000 recommended, vetted and monitored trades on checkatrade.com. So today, Audrey and I are going to be discussing all things storage. So depending upon where you live, this could be challenging if you're in a small apartment or a small home, or maybe you're lucky enough to have a lot of space in your home where you can incorporate storage. When we think of storage, I suppose, Audrey, the biggest things that we begin to think about is the wardrobes, it's the sideboards, it's the cupboards in the kitchen where we're going to be storing most of the items. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's, two main requests I get with help to do with storage. And I'd say one approach is when there is no storage and somebody's got to think about what to put in. So maybe that's a question or a decision between sort of built-in wardrobes or freestanding ones to go in a particular space. But then the other approach to storage is when there's storage already there. So maybe you've moved into a house and there are wardrobes there, but then you're trying to configure them in the best possible way to suit your needs. So I think, the first example I gave when you're starting from scratch and there's nothing there, the beauty of this is that you can start your decision process by actually looking at what the things are that you want to store and measuring, say, if you've got particular pieces of equipment or books or belongings. And then, you know that you've got certain constraints around the sizes then of, the actual storage that you want to put in. The other second approach I mentioned kind of configuring what's there. Obviously then, you've got sort of less scope, I suppose, in some ways, but that's where it can be really useful to think about maybe add-ons and things that you can, use to adapt what's there.
Yeah, and maybe even taking a step back when we think about our wardrobes or different things, and depending upon where you're living, there might be built-in solutions, you might be working with existing, or you might just have a room with 4 walls and you're trying to figure out the layout. I suppose it's worth considering what items do you have? What items do you want to store away? What items do you want to have visible? So, if I'm thinking of a bedroom to begin with, and we could probably go into a lot of detail, Audrey, thinking of every room and every storage option, but, do I need hanging space, or is folded drawers enough of a solution? So really thinking what is in your life that you want to store away, what sort of items are they? And therefore that'll begin to help you as well when you think about storage.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. And, also like not just thinking, I guess, about, the absolute obvious like wardrobes in a bedroom, but there may be other solutions, particularly say in a small bedroom, that you might want to think about upfront. So say if you haven't bought a bed, thinking about your options there. So for example, you could have an Ottoman bed, which is a bed where the whole mattress and panel underneath, can be lifted up so that you've got that whole space in there to put things. Other under bed storage solutions would be pull-out drawers that go underneath. So it may be that if you haven't got a huge amount of space for wardrobes, or you don't want to encroach on the room too much, then you decide that perhaps, shoes get stored in drawers under the bed, or that you do divide up your clothes into sort of more seasonal, summer, winter, and that you will put stuff away under the bed. So I think really good to kind of start with that overall, thinking outside the box as much as possible approach, and then hone in on the individual areas of storage then once you've kind of worked out what that bigger scope is.
Indeed. And I am really intrigued by an Ottoman bed because, well, A, I have one, but B, when I went searching for a bed, I had no idea what an Ottoman bed was. So I had to sort of figure that out. And you see the picture of how it lifts up, and all of a sudden you've got the whole base that you can fill. But there is a lot of nifty storage solutions out there. And maybe we can talk through those, Audrey, because one example that I have, again, in my home, and I live in an apartment, so we're quite tight on space, is that we have a chaise sofa, but the chaise lifts up, and all of a sudden you've got, again, the whole base of that you can put extra items in and store. So it's great, for example, because it's right next to our balcony. I can put all the cushions from the balcony furniture in there and have them out of sight when they're not needed, and have them in a safe place. And of course, I suppose Ottomans as well are being brought in a little bit more into coffee tables, where people are using a little Ottoman pouch in terms of using that as a coffee table.
So yeah, the Ottoman as a coffee table is a great idea, and particularly if it is one that goes to the floor. So an Ottoman or a footstool that goes to the floor or very close to the floor, just tiny legs, then that means that you've got that internal space between the floor and sort of coffee table height, which you can use as storage. Now, I would say though, versus say a coffee table with storage, which might be a shelf or some drawers, it is important to think about what you are wanting to store in that location. So if it's books and magazines, then chances are you want to access these while maybe having a cup of tea or coffee on the surface. So opening up an Ottoman lid then isn't maybe going to work as well as being able to have your tea and coffee on a coffee table surface with a shelf or drawers underneath. But coming back to what you said, Deirdre, about storing the outdoor cushions in your chaise sofa or maybe in an Ottoman, I mean, I think this is a brilliant idea. And particularly now I'm finding, it's a question I'm getting asked so much, because more and more people are investing in this type of furniture for outdoors with removable cushions. So the big question is, where do you put the cushions when it's raining out and you need to store them away? So I quite like that as an idea.
Indeed. And of course, we do get some rain, so you need someplace nice to store them. And some of that outdoor furniture, particularly I'm thinking some of the rattan furniture at the moment, you can really push the chairs in under the table. They fit very snugly, and you can actually have the cushions there, so you're sort of protected from the elements, because it's like a little case where it's all encapsulated.
Yes, yeah, I've seen that before. And also I'm often recommending to people to get these outdoor storage boxes as well. So if you don't have room for a shed, to actually be able to have one of these boxes where it's kind of the perfect size for cushions, or, it could be that you want to store some other kind of more outdoorsy gear out there. And because I suppose no matter what way you're storing the cushions inside, it's potentially taking up space, for other things that you may ideally want to be able to put away sort of inside the home. So good to sort of think about that bigger picture, I guess, to begin with.
Now, we've talked today, Audrey, a lot about ready-made storage solutions that are out there. But of course, there's the shelf solutions, and then you can look at bespoke solutions. So particularly if you have an unusual item, maybe you want to store a bike someplace in your hallway or in your home, or you've got an alcove or a space that's a little bit more I suppose, unique in terms of its layout, you can look at getting something bespoke made, Audrey, couldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I find I end up doing that a lot in projects, because particularly sort of in older properties where you do have exactly the alcoves you mentioned, often in, living rooms, possibly bedrooms as well. And say, typically in a living room, if you've got a fireplace with two alcoves either side, and that will be, an ideal position for a TV if you've got one on one side, and also an area to display, maybe vase of flowers, table lamp, that type of thing. But the challenge can so often be that the alcoves just aren't wide enough to give you a good choice of ready-made, off-the-shelf furniture to put in. So if you're looking for sideboards, you'll often find, amazing sideboards that you love, but unfortunately they just won't go in the alcove. So this is where it can work work really, really well to have something custom made by, a furniture maker or a carpenter. And one of the other advantages to having it custom made is that you can really maximize the storage, because often if you do find something to fit in the alcove, it will need to fit comfortably, and obviously just a little bit of room either side, and then the actual thickness of the furniture itself. So you will inevitably lose a bit of internal storage space then by doing that.
Indeed. So there's solutions for all spaces. Quick shout out for our sponsor, checkatrade.com. Search recommended tradespeople online with checkatrade.com. And the next thing I'm really keen to talk about is solutions within solutions. So recently I have been introduced to vacuum pack bags and realizing how much space I can actually save by putting away some extra duvets and sucking all of the air out and seeing them deflate. And it's like magic, Audrey. So what I'm also thinking about is all of those, I suppose you would call them the ready-made inserts that you can put into wardrobes so that you've got your shoes down in a row, or shelf dividers so that you can actually, organize your drawers. There's some really nifty solutions out there, isn't there?
Oh yeah, there really, really are. And I think, the internal planning of a wardrobe can be an absolute, game changer when it comes to how neat you can keep your bedroom. And I think, often sort of a most basic wardrobe will have a hanging rail, and if you're lucky, maybe a shelf over, perhaps maybe a shelf down near the bottom. But really, a lot of people don't actually need that full hanging space, or at least they don't need very much of it, because so many things like tops or folded up trousers or skirts only require kind of half of that. So then to be able to divide up the space and have some drawers as well internally so that you can fold things up, and extra shelves and things like, pull out, you can have pull out shelves. I actually, in fact, in one of my wardrobes, I've created like an internal dressing table. So like I'm the kind of person who can't keep a dressing table neat and tidy on the surface. There's always lots and lots of things on it. So when I moved into this house, I decided that's it. I'm never having an exposed dressing table again. So with putting shelves in and pull out shelves, it means I can store everything. I've got a big gap between two shelves, and then, pull out another shelf with jewellery and smaller items on it, and then drawers underneath, just like as if it was a chest of drawers for, all the smaller items of clothing.
That's really genius. And actually, I've seen that as well in some kitchen designs lately. So you might have a big nearly larder and you open up the two doors, but you can actually fold them back in either side. And all of a sudden it opens up this area where you could have your toaster and your microwave and a few things that you would keep out. But it also gives you the ability to bring the doors back out and across and cover it all up. So I love that idea about the dressing table sort of concealed within the wardrobe.
Yeah. I've been noticing a lot in kitchens too, as you say, and even like home office solutions as well, where the same sort of system with the doors that open and fold back, and it means then you can have a desk surface and shelves above as well, and then it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, when you close the doors across it.
That was literally the next example I was going to use. And I suppose one other one that I've seen is in the kitchen in your cupboard. So, between the shelves, there can be a lot of space. And are you really going to have 30 plates all stacked up? So there's even little inserts that you can put in there, whereby it's like a tier of a cake nearly. I describe it as 3 different tiers. So within one shelf space, all of that height isn't wasted, because with this tiered unit, you can put in different plates. So you've got 4 or 5 plates on each rung, which makes it much more accessible, especially if the different sizes as well. So really smart solutions out there as well.
Yeah, that's right. And actually with those inserts, what can be really handy as well is to have some that are less deep than your cupboard. So it means that you can put one in towards the back, have 2 layers of, say, glasses or cups or something. But then if you still need that additional height for, say, wine glasses or something that is a bit taller, you're not completely ruling out your options then by dividing up the space. You can have a bit of full height as well.
Yeah. Now, in terms of putting everything away behind doors and having it neat and tidy, that's all great. But actually, storage just doesn't encompass that alone. Storage also encompasses how do we display items that we like and cherish. So if we think of our sitting room, it could be displaying our books. It could be displaying trophies or medals or family photos or some nice glassware. I think Waterford Crystal is the choice, Audrey, of growing up in many houses that we were probably familiar with.
Yeah.
So, of course, think of your solutions not only in terms of putting it all away, but how you can display things nicely that you want to have on show.
Yeah, I think, people are becoming a lot more conscious of that as well, that actually, there would have been a time maybe, when you talk about the Waterford Crystal, it takes me back to, the kind of the cabinets, and that would solely be for display. But then you'd have like a bookcase, which would be solely for books. And then you'd have your lower down sort of closed in drawers and doors, maybe on a sideboard for things that were completely out of sight. But I think now there's great ways to kind of mix all these in a bit more. So, bookcases where maybe you've got kind of a series of square openings, but you can have books in some, you can have a vase or something on display in another. And you can even have maybe storage boxes or some that are partially closed for the things you do want to store away. So I think there's a lot of very versatile solutions, and also things that help you kind of change things around as your needs and your belongings change over time.
Yeah, keeping flexibility, I think, is really important. And I'm a particular fan, I think, of inserts. It's one thing that I've come across lately and I've been using quite effectively. So even where you have that drawer and we might have typically shoved a load of papers in it, you can put in that insert whereby you can lift that out really easily to be able to get to what you want rather than having to ruffle through whatever it is that you store in your drawers. I suppose, Audrey, when we talk about storage behind doors versus what's out and on display, you can use what's out and on display very well as well by having mirrored doors. And I think this is really good because it obviously protects the things that you're looking to display from the elements, so be it dust, etc. Now, you probably have to be quite neat. I've seen some beautiful wardrobes and dressing rooms where you've got all of these clear doors, which are fabulous. But of course, then you need to be pretty neat. So it's probably worth keeping in mind, what you're going to store there and how neatly you're going to be able to keep it. Realistically, being honest with yourself rather than maybe what you're dreaming of and will never do.
Yeah, I think you mean like clear glass doors on a wardrobe.
Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely would go for the mirrored option myself so that you can't actually see through. But yeah, I know some people are super neat and they could definitely do that. But yes, it's another kind of life challenge I'm hesitating to introduce at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's important that people keep it practical in terms of what will work for them, their neatness, their habits, etc. And, I think that's one thing about storage as well. When I think about it, it's, having the convenience of things that you need to hand, that they're there and easy to get to. And you're not, sifting back to the very bottom back of a cupboard trying to pull an item out. If you're going to be using something, have it accessible to you. And I think that's where hooks can be really great. So whether it is, a hook in the hallway to throw your coat on, if you're not actually going to end up, putting it into the cupboard, or maybe it's having some hooks for some mugs right beside the kettle so that you can easily, take down a cup when you're brewing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, if you're doing anything from scratch in the home, I think it's so great to just, have that opportunity to think through how you realistically use things. So not how you think you should use them or you would ideally use them, but really, being true to yourself about your own kind of personal, habits and ways you go about it, and actually designing around that, because that's what's really going to make your life kind of more streamlined, more efficient.
Yeah. And one last tip from me would be, and it's still on hooks, but actually a little hook inside the inside of a cupboard can be a lifesaver. So, you can put your tea towel all of a sudden behind the door rather than out on front. And I think some of those little clever tricks can be really, really helpful as well.
Yeah, even for coats, in whole cupboards as well. Works a treat for me anyway, doing that.
So, Audrey, one last question from me, and that's around bespoke storage solutions. Can you give us an indication how we should think about that in terms of one, cost and how it compares to the off-the-shelf solutions, but also in terms of timelines, in terms of getting things made? What's that looking like?
Yeah, so I would say actually on the cost side, if you're looking at maybe alcoves either side of a fireplace, like the idea we talked about earlier, I would say do not hesitate to get this costed up as a bespoke solution. You might think it's going to be so much more expensive than something you find off the shelf, but often it's not because, as I said, you can be limited in terms of what you can find as an off-the-shelf solution, and therefore, often that means you're paying sort of over the odds because you haven't got your full choice. And then when you get it customized, it's absolutely tailored to your needs and what you want to put in there. And you can have the color and finish of your choice. So I was actually looking back over a project from a while ago where we did some custom alcove cupboards either side of a fireplace. Now, one alcove was 1 meter wide and the other one was over 2 meters wide. So this is, a really, really big example. And the cost to supply, fit and paint these was just over £2,100. And, you would easily spend 1,000 on a sideboard, a nice looking sideboard for an alcove. So, times that by 2, I think, a lot of things you'd see around, 1,000 each, so 2,000 in total, then, may not give you exactly what you need, but for around the same cost, then you could specify it to your exact requirements. And I think often why people think that it's going to cost a horrendous amount more is because, say if you think of a bespoke kitchen versus something off the shelf, it will be a huge amount more because we're generally talking about meters and meters and meters of cabinetry. But if it's a smaller area, then, I think it's really, really worth considering. Now, time-wise, obviously, yes, you will more than likely have to wait longer to have something made than you will if you're finding something off the shelf that is readily available. Now, often off-the-shelf things can still take a number of weeks. So really important when you get that quote, to ask what the kind of timeline on it is. But, I would be a real believer that it's absolutely worth the wait to get that better, long-term solution that really suits your needs.
Unless you're on changing rooms and you've one of those workmen outside in your garden with some MDF and creating something like magic in a really short space of time.
Yeah, exactly that. But that may not be your long-term solution. That may only last you a number of weeks. So yeah, absolutely be wary.
Ah, interesting. Good to know. Well, Audrey, it sounds like there is a multitude of solutions out there for storage. So regardless of what the space is, if you're looking for off-the-shelf Ottoman beds to wardrobes and various solutions that we talked about, to the bespoke finishing any alcove or awkward space, and then right through to the ready-made solutions and inserts so that you can put a smart storage solution into various drawers and spaces. And don't forget about your hooks, which can be really, really helpful. And finally, then just always keep in mind, what are you looking to store? And do you want it visible? Or do you want to be able to shut it behind doors as your first consideration? So happy shopping for storage.
If you enjoyed our podcast, we would be delighted if you could rate, review and subscribe on your favourite podcast provider. This will help others who are seeking home and furnishing advice and inspiration discover the DNA of home interiors. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter at the DNA of Home Interiors.
If you are looking for inspiration and help in designing your home interiors, take a look at Audrey Whelan's masterclasses on audreywhelan.com/events. And don't forget to check out youfurnish.com, a search and comparison website which helps connect people with amazing furniture from over 100 retailers. We designed it to solve the problem we and thousands like us faced furnishing our homes. And now we are really excited that everyone can search, discover, compare and shop for their home all in one place.
Thank you to our sponsor checkatrade.com for their support in bringing this episode to you. And most importantly, thank you all for listening today.
We hope you can join us next time.